Donald Trump has issued an executive order attacking the National Museum of African American History and Culture and threatening to remove funding from programs that promote what he calls an improper ideology. After days of failing to explain why his defense secretary was texting top secret war plans to a reporter, Trump is attacking black people to distract from Signalgate. The new executive order issued on Thursday attacks national museums for interrogating institutional racism. The horror! Imagine a museum in a country founded on slavery and segregation having the audacity to explore the history of racism. This museum is one of the most popular museums in America, receiving 1.6 million visitors last year alone. Trump claims his order is designed to restore the Smithsonian to its rightful place as a symbol of inspiration and American greatness. So the guy who knows nothing about American history and thought that Frederick Douglass was alive just a few years ago thinks the only way we can celebrate American greatness is by whitewashing history and erasing the legacy of racism. So what does his executive order do? Nothing! Yep, you heard it. It does absolutely nothing except to distract from his Signalgate scandal, stir outrage from black people, and convince his white MAGA supporters that he's sticking it to the colors. The order says the vice president, in consultation with a bunch of other people, shall work to effectuate Trump's goals through his role on the Smithsonian Board of Regents. All this does is tell J.D. Vance to be an asshole on the Board of Regents that governs the Smithsonian. There are 17 members on the board, including several prominent Democrats, and J.D. Vance is just one of them, so he has no authority to make this happen. The order also says the vice president and the OMB director shall work with Congress to try to stop funding from programs that divide Americans based on race. That could have been an email or a public group chat. All it does is tell J.D. Vance to try to get Congress to cut funding for black exhibits that Trump doesn't like. The order does not cut funding for this museum or any other museum in the Smithsonian, and Trump doesn't have the authority to do so anyway. For the National Museum of African American History behind me, it's important to remember that 46% of its $81 million budget comes from federal appropriations, but most of the funding comes from private donations and general trust funds. So even if Trump and Vance convinced the Republican Congress to cut funding, we as Americans can make up the annual $37 million in potential lost funding from the government for a few years until we get rid of these clowns in the White House. But here's the kicker. The same executive order that purports to restore truth and sanity to American history instructs the Department of Interior to reinstate Confederate monuments that were removed during the Biden administration. Yes, they're eliminating black contributions to American history. At the same time, they're celebrating the most racist white contributions, slavery, and Civil War. You see, the Biden administration removed an infamous Confederate memorial here at Arlington National Cemetery and renamed military bases that had been named after Confederate generals. For those who don't remember history, the Confederates were the bad guys in the Civil War who broke away from the United States to preserve slavery. Trump doesn't like them being portrayed as bad guys. So let's review here. Trump's executive order does nothing to the National Museum of African American History and Culture except get people talking about it, which means it's all a distraction from the scandal over the Yemen attack, which itself was a distraction from the economy, according to Pete Hegseth's text message on Signal. This guy is like the opposite of Commissioner Gordon turning on the bat signal in Gotham. Whenever Trump gets in trouble, he turns on the chat signal, and all the racists in MAGA world come running to his defense.
Hey, what's up everybody? This is your presenter Ginger Stories, and I'm hope and glad that you're doing fine. Now, for the longest time, you know very well that the work of the enemy is always trying to do anything that will make black people understand their history. And you know how significant the Smithsonian Institution, particularly the National Museum of African American History and Culture, has played a significant role in making black people understand some aspects of what we call the black culture, black history, and appreciating black history. Now, President Donald Trump's recent executive order has targeted the Smithsonian Institution, particularly the National Museum of African American History and Culture, right? Which has ignited significant talks. The order aims to eliminate what the administration describes as improper, divisive, or anti-American ideology from federally funded museums and cultural institutions. Now, you get to know one thing. The critic argued that this move threatens to censor and erase critical aspects of black history under the guise of promoting a unified national narrative. I'll say something, folks. You know very well that this is the crucial time for black folks to guard the black history, because for the longest time, even the black museums back in Africa, they've always tried to do away with them because they don't want you to preserve and know and have all this knowledge. Whenever time it challenges the white supremacy, it gives them what is called a psychological phenomena, right? This psychological phenomena is called cognitive dissonance. When somebody challenges the truth that you believe to have, and now you're trying to conflict yourself, they'll try to bring propaganda that what these museums are educating or giving the media is more of divisive, as you know, the president of America is trying to term and weaponize the black American culture. And so it's important for we black folks to guard this with everything that we have. Again, I'll apologize for not showing my face today. For some reasons, I couldn't do that. But the most important thing is that I'm still going to be sharing these videos for us to get to learn and understand the perspective of what people say about this, because black people are reacting on this. White America is also reacting on this. But at the end of it all, let's watch the video. I'll be back and we'll have a discussion in regards to this. For those who are watching us for the first time, I'll ask you to subscribe to our channel, join our membership, and really get to see what we can offer you. But until then, let's jump right into the video. I'll be back with my commentary as usual.
Okay, guys, in a nutshell, I've been seeing on blogs that Trump wants to get rid of African-American history in the Smithsonian. They have an African-American history museum. And the answer, it's kind of complicated, but it's not. He doesn't want to get rid of the African-American part of the Smithsonian. What he does want is for it to be presented correctly. What happened, they presented the concepts of a nuclear family, individualism, and hard work as white culture concepts. And he's saying that if you're going to have a museum here for whichever group's history, that's not a white concept. Anybody can be hardworking. Anybody can have a nuclear family, which is mom, dad, child, or man, woman. Anybody can have that. Anybody can be an individualist. That's not a white concept. That's anyone. And he's saying if you're going to have a museum here in America and it be federally funded, where we handing you the dollars, you're not going to be divisive and tell black people that the only people who can have, or the only people who came up with nuclear families, hard work, and individualism are white people, and that's a white concept. He's saying that's an American concept. That's what we do as the United States. That's what people aren't reporting. They're just saying Trump wants to get rid of African-American history. He's also targeting the women's history part, because they are trying to include men in women's sports as a part of their exhibits. And he's saying absolutely the fuck not. If it's women's history, then it's going to be about women. And y'all already know how that man felt about that. He told you before he was elected. He told you when he was running. He told you when he got in office. I'm not standing for this and I'm totally against it. So again, let's not be shocked and act like y'all didn't know that that's what his stance was. So in a nutshell, no, he's not trying to get rid of African-American history, but he wants the verbiage to be correct and not divisive to where it's saying that black people aren't apt to have nuclear families, hard workers, and individualism. So that's in a nutshell. You might agree, you might not. Let me know in the comments. Remember to be respectful. And I will talk to you guys on the next one. Go USA. Y'all have a great day. Bye.
Why don't we talk about the time America dropped a on its own people? Yes, America. This isn't fake news, it's history that's been erased. Listen up, because you won't believe how this story unfolded. Imagine a community where black excellence thrived. Banks, theaters, grocery stores, schools, all owned and run by the people for the people. This wasn't a dream, it was reality in Greenwood, Tulsa, also known as Black Wall Street. This was a place where generational wealth was being built. Families were sending their kids to college, entrepreneurs entrepreneurs would get into that bag. Greenwood symbolized what was possible for Black folks at a time where people tried to crush them at every opportunity. But success like this didn't sit right with everyone, especially the jealous unmelanated folks who didn't like people with color. And in 1921, those tensions literally exploded. Here's how it started. A young Black teenager was accused of moving to a white lady.
No one knew if this was true, but the word spread.
A white mob formed and saw this as an opportunity to tear up the town. When Black residents stepped up to defend the teenager, things spiraled out of control. What followed was one of the most horrifying acts in U.S. history. Mobs stormed Greenwood, lighting up homes and businesses. But it didn't stop there. Planes were used to drop bombs on the neighborhood. In America, over 300 Black citizens, including children, were turned to ashes. Thousands were left homeless. And 35 blocks of thriving businesses, culture, and dreams were turned to ashes and dust in less than a day. And it gets worse. But first, drop a light bulb emoji in the comments if you're learning about this for the first time. I'm curious to see what schools are teaching. Also, make sure you like and share this video. Here's the part that really hits. No one was held accountable. No arrests, no reparations. Survivors were left to pick up the pieces with no help from the free country and the pigs. And to make it worse, this story was buried, left out of history books, ignored in classrooms, erased from the national narrative. Why? Because it challenges the American dream, or should I say the American myth. The myth that this country has always been fair, just, and equal. Stories like this expose the truth, and the truth is uncomfortable. But we can't ignore it, because history has a way of repeating itself. And if we don't learn from it, then the same defeat will get us. Black Wall Street wasn't just about wealth. It was a shining example of what Black folks could accomplish, even in a system designed to take them down. Its destruction wasn't just about jealousy. It was about fear. Fear of what Black unity and self-determination look like when left unchecked. Greenwood was a threat to the status quo. We need to keep sharing these stories because the more we understand, the stronger we become. Next time, we're diving into another chapter of hidden history, and it will blow your mind.
Well, they're coming for the museums. We knew this was going to happen. We warned you this was going to happen, and voila, here we are. In case you're not aware of what's going on, Trump recently decided he has beef with the Smithsonian because it is too woke for him, and of all institutions, the National Zoo in Washington. So he went ahead and signed an executive order to eliminate, quote, improper, divisive, or anti-American ideology from these centers. Now, the BBC is asking a very, very important question here. What exactly is anti-American? Well, the answer is whatever this administration decides is anti-American today. For example, Jackie Robinson, literally the most American person I can possibly conceive of. His article on the Pentagon's website was recently removed, and they are attempting to ban his biography from naval libraries. Jackie Robinson, an American hero. Of course, this is only one of 900 books that they're looking into banning. The others include the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr., and another American hero, and Einstein's On Race and Racism. And today, March 31st, 2025, the Institute of Museum and Library Services had their entire staff put on leave quietly. And if you're not aware of what this institute does, basically they are responsible for a lot of federal funding for libraries and museums. This is fascism. It's fascism.
All right, y'all. He is absolutely coming for our Blacksonian. There is no doubt about it. He specifically name-checked the National Museum of African American History and Culture in his latest executive order. Everything we feel about that is justified. If you are sickened, outraged, sad, incensed, all of it is legit. Because we know why he's coming for us. We know what our history teaches people. And we also know it is dangerous to be a people with no memory. But I always want us to remember, that's not us. Our history, our memory, doesn't exist because of that building. That building exists because we were wise enough to preserve our memory. Every single artifact in that building exists because somebody thought enough of what we created and we built and who we are, thought enough of generations yet unborn to preserve the memory. Against all odds, against all threats, our ancestors and our elders thought enough of us, generations they may never see or know, to keep the thing, to hide it under a floorboard, to whisper a story in secret, to pass the word in a newspaper we owned and printed, even when those offices and printing presses got torched, to preach it in churches, even when those churches got bombed, to teach it in schools that we created and funded, even when they came to shut those schools down. Somebody was wise enough to sing the memory in coded language and then record it in somebody's basement. Somebody was wise enough to write the family tree of the family we weren't supposed to have in the front page of that Bible, to plant the memory on somebody's field, to cook it in somebody's potbelly stove, to photograph it on somebody's hand-me-down camera, to paint it on bits and scraps of paper. Somebody was wise enough to style the memory on somebody's chest, to braid it into somebody's scalp. Somebody was wise enough and thoughtful enough and loved us enough to read and write the memory, even when reading and writing it meant almost certain death. All of these things were how we preserved memory when there was no museum, when there was no Netflix special, no Oprah's book club selection. It was dangerous work, and yet we knew it was necessary and righteous for the sake of a future of a people. Black people's memory has mattered long before we ever had a monument. And preserving that memory has preserved us. Those blueprints are how we got over. That's how we survived. That's how we sustained for generations in abjectly hostile territory. Our memory is how we built a future for a people that were supposed to be wiped out by now. A present for a people who were always supposed to be past. Our survival was supposed to be an impossibility, but instead, African people, chained and enslaved and ripped from their motherland, took the memory of that place, took the memory of our many languages and faiths and tribes and traditions and family structures and ways of being and values, and created a new people in order to be protected and to persist. African American is a whole new creation based on the memory we preserved. That's who we are. So now more than ever, we're going to have to act like we know who we are. We are going to need those blueprints to survive, and we're going to need to preserve the memory we're creating now to build the future we deserve. I'm not saying we shouldn't be outraged. We should. I'm not saying organized outrage doesn't work. Y'all know I believe it absolutely does. I'm not saying we shouldn't protect that building and everything in it and everybody in it. We absolutely have to. And we should always know our memory and the things made up of it made us a worthy people before we ever had a monument to ourselves. So we got to act like it. We're going to have to be the reason why we never lose a recipe. Now's the time, y'all. I love you.
There is a new Trump executive order that charges the Vice President J.D. Vance with eliminating, quote, anti-American ideology and anything that he finds to be, quote, improper from the Smithsonian. And of particular note here, the executive order names the Smithsonian Museum of African American History as well as the Planned Museum of Women's History. What's going on here?
Well, with the stroke of a pen, they are deciding what is deemed to be fully American and what is deemed to be anti-American. And they're going to have a fight here. You know, there are a number of people who are very proud of the Smithsonian, very proud of the way the Smithsonian has widened its aperture to tell a fuller story of America. Because the story that we tell ourselves as Americans is important. And it's important that it is a full and complete story and reflects the histories, even the difficult moments in history, but reflects the histories of as many people as possible. Now, the Smithsonian gets about 62%, specifically the National Museum of African American History and Culture gets about 62% of its money from the federal government. Mm-hmm. The museums are, you know, when he targets the National Museum of African American History and Culture, that is a very successful museum. You know, it opened just a few years ago. more than 197 donors raised $297 million to make sure that they were able to open the doors, and a much, larger number of smaller donors. So when they start to narrow the story that is told, it's bad for America in terms of the history that we tell ourselves. It's bad for the Smithsonian also in terms of the way it opens its doors and how it conducts business. If people don't see that institution as something that reflects their story also, maybe they spend less time there. Maybe they spend less money in those gift shops. Maybe we don't see the Smithsonian being the gold standard for museums that it has been over many years, and most particularly recently, as they started to tell a broader, richer, wider, more full, and more accurate story of American history.
The Trump administration and Republicans in Congress are right now, they are trying to gut Medicaid and Medicare programs on which nearly a third of our country rely, all to pay for those tax cuts. They're also dismantling the very institutions meant to safeguard our nation's health and well-being. That's why I'm going to stand here and explain to people what's going on and how our healthcare programs are at risk and being undermined. This is about right or wrong. It is wrong to take away healthcare for millions of people.
It looks like Trump's just now openly using the authoritarian playbook and is targeting the Smithsonian and National Zoo for anti-American ideology, with him signing an executive order that instructed J.D. Vance to eliminate improper, divisive, or anti-American ideology in the Smithsonian museums and the National Zoo. He also ordered the Interior Secretary to restore statues and memorials in parks that were changed or removed in the past 5 years to what he called a false revision of history, which means they're putting Confederate statues back up, with the order also saying that Congress should not fund Smithsonian exhibits that, quote, degrade American values and divide Americans by race. And then he singled out the National Museum of African American History and Culture as being problematic. Right? So you have many saying that it's hard to see this as anything but an authoritarian attempt to rewrite American history, with historians saying that one of the first things that authoritarians do is rewrite the history of their country, and this because it helps them control thought. Right? If people believe a certain version of the past, they're more likely to behave the way the regime wants in the present, because once objective history is compromised, the truth itself becomes relative and manipulable. Stalin would remove political rivals from photos to erase them from history. Adolf rewrote German history to create this Aryan fantasy and erase Jewish contributions to Germany. Mussolini rewrote the Italian experience in World War I to fuel nationalism. Putin rewrote Russian history to justify the invasion of Ukraine. And in 1949, George Orwell wrote this book based on Stalin's USSR called 1984, and in it he writes, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." And in 1951, Hannah Arendt warned of the same, saying that authoritarian movements thrive on destroying objective truth, confusing people, and manufacturing alternative historical realities. Right? So in taking all of that together, it's why you're seeing so many experts saying this is a very critical moment right now. Follow to stay in the loop.
Okay, I want to take a moment to say thank you to Donald Trump, not out of praise, but out of truth. Because while you rip through every part of this government, tearing down justice, equality, and fairness under the fake excuse of fighting DEI fraud, what you're really doing is confirming what black folks have been saying for generations. America was built on racism, fueled by fear and sustained by white supremacy. You've exposed it all. The masks are off. The polite racism, the fake allyship, the colorblind lies, it's all gone. Now we see it raw and unfiltered. You're not just targeting policy, you're targeting people. Black people, brown people, marginalized communities. And the wild part, we make up the smallest portion of this country, yet somehow we are the biggest threat to the lie that white supremacy built. That should tell you everything. You're afraid not of violence, not of replacement, but of the power we hold even when we have nothing. You see the way our culture, our brilliance, our resilience, our excellence continues to shape this country, even when it tries to erase us. Donald Trump is just the loudest version of a system that's always been in place. He is the living, breathing proof that this country was never designed with us in mind. And yet, we continue to define it. So thank you, Donald, for exposing what so many tried to deny, for showing the world that the fear of black greatness is real, for proving that racism isn't in our imagination, it's in the fabric of this nation. And to my people, we don't have to fight to prove our worth. He's doing that for us. All we have to do is stand firm, stay awake, and know that the truth is finally louder than the lie. We are not broken. We are not the problem. We are the evidence of the power that this country can contain. Let that truth ring louder than its hate.
Hello, welcome back to the channel. Just hope that you're super great from wherever you're watching us from. Now, the NMAAHC, which was established in 2016, served as a vital respiratory for preserving and showcasing rich and complex history of African Americans. You know very well that its exhibit provide an unflinching look at the realities of slavery, segregation, and ongoing struggle for civil rights, while also celebrating the profound contributions of Black individuals to American culture and society. By labeling such content as divisive, the executive order undermines the museum's mission to present an honest and comprehensive portrayal of the national past. Also, you need to understand that this action is part of broader pattern by Trump administration to reshape public institutions to align with particular ideological perspective. For instance, the administration has also targeted the Institute of Museum and Library Services, a federal agency responsible for providing grants to museums and libraries across the United States. An executive order issued earlier aimed to eliminate the IMLS to the maximum extent allowed by the law, resulting in staff being placed on administrative leave and a significant reduction in funding for cultural institutions worldwide. This is what is happening. They know damn well that people are getting to know the truth and people are getting to question things that happened in history, right? Since they're afraid that some ideology will reach the masses because people are getting to learn the Black history every day, every night. So this fear that is in them makes them pass, right, some policies that will make people be afraid of learning and understanding their history and culture. And that's what they have always tried to do. I mean, check history. You get to see how they have always tried, they have always made it possible, right? They've always tried to make it possible for Black people not to learn and understand who they are. For the longest time, anything that was meant to develop Black people has always been taken away from them. I mean, look at the Tulsa massacre, look at the Black Wall Street, how they did anything that makes a Black person be on the spotlight will always be taken away. So this Smithsonian Museum, the Smithsonian Institution was playing a great role in making Black people really understand by giving harsh realities. And now the harsh realities are being said to be improper, divisive, and anti-American ideology, right? And so this shows you how authoritarian these systems are and how they control of Black knowledge, because they don't want you to know the truth. Because when you know the truth, now that threatens the reality. Because you know, knowledge, people perish because of lack of knowledge. And where can people get this knowledge? It is from the museums, it is from the libraries, and even the institutions which are responsible in funding these libraries, these museums are being banned because they don't want people to have knowledge, and people will have knowledge through all these, museums and libraries. So that's what they're trying to do. I honestly don't know what you think and feel about this, but I feel like the reality, this is an expression of fear that Black people are getting to understand and knowing their power, and Trump knows damn well, right? So honestly, I want you to tell me what to think about this video, because it is so much revealing of what he is capable of doing, right? So while you watch this video, I want you to just, let me know honestly, what do you feel, or how do you feel about this? That was just what I had to say, because all this you're seeing right now, it is a reflection of fear. People who are acting in accordance of fear, they are, reflecting the fear that they have. Because when a person is afraid of you having knowledge, they know that you can take them down by having that knowledge. And now what will they do? They'll try so hard and weaponize the knowledge that you have so that it becomes that you're doing something which is wrong. And that's what the president of the United States is trying to do right now. So everyone is questioning, even the white America themselves are questioning this, because all these museums have always been there. Why is it that right now it becomes so much divisive? Why is right now it bringing unwanted ideology to the American, institution? So those are the questions that people are asking, and I'm also asking as a presenter that question, right? So let me know what you think about this. I'll honestly appreciate your perspective in what you're trying to do. And again, I'll say this, and I'm apologizing. I'm sorry for today not showing my face. For some reasons, I couldn't do that. But I promise tomorrow everything will be fine, and we're gonna be talking as usual. So as you know, this is your presenter, Ginger Stories, and I appreciate all of you who are supporting me through my Cash App, who are sending me the super thanks and everything. Trust me, I really appreciate, because you're the ones who are keeping me going by motivating me to, do all this research and compile all these videos so that we can get to have a proper discussion in regards to all things that are happening. Until then, this is a presenter, Ginger Stories, and I'm hoping to see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.